AI is not a incredibly sophisticated brain somewhere that's thinking like a human. Generally, AI is not super creative, but we're going to find some examples of where it can be creative in coming up with new ideas that maybe we hadn't thought about, simply because it has a massive amount of information built into it.
All right, so we are going to be talking about AI and AI tools, and Pete and I have been doing just a lot of work on this over the last several months. And this is really what became the genesis for our content creation process, which I know we're kind of modifying and changing completely here. And I want to go through really what you guys want to learn about this instead of just going over what I think we should be talking about, because we are using AI for a lot of different things. And it's just going to continue to grow. And we need to leverage all of the AI tools as they come up. And certain tools are things like Discord and Midjourney, using various prompts. There's prompt engineering that we need to work on. There's a number of different things as it relates to AI. So either if you guys want to like come on screen and ask questions about it, or if you wanted to put it into the chat box, you can ask questions about that. But I want to go into, what are your guys' questions as it relates to AI when using it for our business, right? Obviously, there's so many different applications for AI, and we can go into a lot of them. But I want to make sure that we're going over things that will be helpful for you all in your roles. No one has any questions about AI. That means either you're not thinking about it, not paying attention, or just afraid to ask.
To me, it gets a little overwhelming, because I think that we want to learn as much as we can and do as much as we can. But then I think it's biting it off in small chunks, like, okay, this is how it can help you do blogs, or this is how it can help you do emails, or this is how it can help you, form content for posts and ads, just so that it's not so overwhelming.
Okay, that's a great way to start, Kylie. I like that. So let's talk about what AI really is. AI is not a incredibly sophisticated brain somewhere that's thinking like a human and figuring out a way to bridge the gap between all these different disparate thoughts. That's not what AI really is. AI is a really, really advanced computing mechanism that takes something that, hey, I just gave it this input, and it's either continuing a thought process or using search capabilities or a repository of information to find things. I don't know, maybe Kylie, Pete, and I are probably the only ones old enough on this call to remember actually having to go back to looking at things inside of encyclopedias to find our information, right? And I give that example to my kids that, what would you do if the internet stopped? What would actually happen if the internet went out, your phone went out, you didn't have an iPad, and you need to look something up? Where would you go? And to my kids' credit, they actually were thinking about and trying to figure this out. It took them a while to realize, okay, now the phone is useless, the computer's useless, the iPad's useless. What am I going to do? Oh, I might go to the library and I might look things up. And, we talked about the reference section and then encyclopedias. And then this whole world of information was available long before, the internet, computers, and all of that. And what AI does is essentially the same thing. It takes the input that you give it, and then it goes out there and tries to find information related to that topic based off of its knowledge base. And in this case, like ChatGPT, they scoured the internet up until 2021, something like that, April 21. I can't remember the latest scrubbing that they did. And they pulled a whole bunch of information down. And then the AI is categorizing this in a billion different ways. And what AI does is it allows us to go and search and find information and then compile reasonable responses based off of what it's found. Generally, AI is not super creative, but we're going to find some examples of where it can be creative in coming up with new ideas that maybe we hadn't thought about, simply because it has a massive amount of information built into it. Now, going forward, that's going to change, right? AI is going to be able to start taking different thoughts, different ideas, different inputs, and mesh them up in a certain way and creating and replicating what we would think of as human thought, right? The ability to actually think on the fly and assess a situation and come up with alternative options, right? Certain tools you might not even think of as AI. One of the earliest original examples of what I can think of as AI is, if you remember, MapQuest and routing. And if you had to, long before there was even GPS, MapQuest would come up and give you a route from here to there. It would actually figure out, based off of an algorithm, here's how I go from here to here the fastest way possible. Or here's how I go from here to here without using highways, and I only want to use back roads, or how I avoid toll roads and things like that. So what AI is doing is it's leveraging an algorithm to try and figure things out. Now that's not artificial intelligence, really. That algorithm of MapQuest, that's just an algorithm saying, hey, here are the parameters you must fall within. And then it uses those rules and says, okay, I'm going to based off these rules, I'm going to go figure that out. So when a lot of people talk about AI, they're even not even really accurate. They're talking about algorithms. And a lot of things up until recently were just a basic algorithm that somebody had to go in and they had to code, and then you would get an output based on very specific parameters. As AI evolves, it's going to start to get rid of those parameters and think outside the box. And hopefully we never get to a time and space where we call it Skynet, and all of a sudden Terminator comes available and they say, hey, humans are the ones ruining the planet. Let's get rid of humans because they're the problem. We really hope that we don't have that issue. But it is really scary what AI can do, because AI replicates and makes us think that it's actually coming up with its own thoughts, when in reality, it's searching a database and it's giving us an output. So that's a baseline way to think of AI. Now, there's a lot of other variations around that. There's a lot of different tools that we can use for AI, and there's a lot of things that AI is capable of that we aren't even aware of. So, for example, when I was working in a corporate job, we did a lot of machine learning and deep data science and data and analytics, and we would go and we'd take this, these PDF documents, and we'd scan them into a system, and then we use OCR, optical character recognition, to figure out what was on that scanned PDF. Well, that was a very laborious process. And if anyone ever did it, you got like mumbo jumbo junk on the output, and it didn't make any sense. So now AI and machine learning goes in and says, this cursive P is actually a P. And so it take that and put it into it as opposed to a symbol, right? And now AI is starting to recognize some of those things. So it's learning. It's constantly getting smarter. And the smarter it gets, the better the outputs it's going to give us. But there is a thing inside of AI called hallucinations. And if we look at ChatGPT or Google Bard, which you guys now have access to Google Bard, I'll show you how to get that in here in just a minute. Any of these are limited in what they can look up and figure out. So, for example, if you ask ChatGPT, give me some of the best examples of novels about the fall of the Roman Empire, for example. And it might come up with some really good ones, but it might also make some things up, right? It might actually get to a point where it's coming up with random thoughts and ideas because we're feeding it so much information. It's like, I can't really find what you're looking for, so I'm just going to make something up, right? And these hallucinations are actually really funny because sometimes you go and you fact check the AI, like, yeah, that book doesn't exist, that author doesn't exist. None of this stuff in history actually existed, but for some reason you came up with that. So we have to be really careful of the outputs that AI can give us because those hallucinations are real. And until we get to a point where it fact checks itself, we still need to fact check and we need to look up what it's putting out there. Yeah, Pete.
Yeah, it's like back in the day, we're the only ones old enough to remember having to have maps when you actually drive, paper maps. And when you were a company selling maps, you would put fake towns on the maps. Just so that people who stole your designs, you could trace them, because if you put a fake town that you knew was fake, then somebody stole your map, you know that they stole your particular map. But that's the same concern with this ChatGPT as we use it for content creation. If we're not the subject matter experts and all of a sudden we're outputting stuff that just has wrong information, that's really on us.
100%. Yeah. And that's what's going to make us look silly, right? We don't know any better. So this is why, from a content creation perspective, we said, hey, instead of us coming up with all the content and all the ideas and then writing it all, let's just take the subject matter experts and let's actually make them experts. And from a company perspective, I want you guys to think about this longer term. Our goal is going to be positioning all of our clients as the expert in their space to help drive revenue, profits, clients and all that to them. And the more that we can make them the expert, the better they're going to do. But that puts the onus on them to become an expert, as opposed to us to figure this all out and write it as if we are them and then giving them that expertise status, right? So it's going to be taking content from them, repurposing that content, and maybe using AI to bridge some of those gaps that we may have, and leverage AI to put it out the right way. So what are different AI tools that we can use? Really simple ones are finish this sentence, right? And we can tell AI I might get stuck and I might say, I don't know how to finish this sentence, or I don't know what words to use. And so I can type something in. I can say, finish this sentence. I'll show you an example of that in a minute. That's one example. Another thing that we can use is give me ideas. Give me a bullet point. Give me lists of things that we want to talk about, or things that are important to this audience, or relevant topics that are vital for somebody to know in a specific industry. Things like that are really great uses of AI. We can then take AI and we can say, all right, now let's come up with headlines. Let's come up with a headline for a blog. Let's come up with a headline for an ad. Let's come up with headlines for email and email subject lines and things like that. Because now we can tell AI, this is what we're trying to do, and I need you to give me some ideas. Now, this comes down to the most important piece of AI, which is really, really hard to get to and really hard to understand, but it's getting easier. We're called prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is the ability for us to feed information into the AI tool, whichever one it is, and have that AI tool recognize that we're giving it some sort of instructions and asking it for a very specific type of output. And the point of giving it the right kind of input is that if the better we are at giving it information and telling it specifically what we want, the better it's going to be at giving us the response we're looking for. And it's going to be even more creative if we give it the right kind of information, and creative in an accurate sense, right? We don't want it to just start creating random facts and figures and things like that and putting it out like, the main, we don't want it to be that. Instead, what we want to do is we want to put out accurate information that if somebody did go back and look it up, like, oh yeah, that does make sense, right? Those are some of the things that we want to kind of keep in mind. So does that part make sense, right? Prompt engineering gives the AI tool something to start with, something to use, and then it goes back and searches inside of its repository for all the right information, and then it can give us an output. But we need to be very specific on what we train it to do, what we ask it to do. Does that part make sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's kind of give you guys an example of the really cool things that AI can do, because with AI, we are able to do some pretty incredible things that I believe a lot of people are still learning, and it's obviously becoming all the rage, right? So we're still in the tip of the iceberg here, right? And I've been doing AI and machine learning stuff for like 12, 13 years now. So it's cool to see that it's becoming mainstream. So we're getting into that early adopter mode right now, and then eventually into the early majority. So the early adopters are going to be agencies like us, right? The innovators are the scientists, the PhDs, the computer programmers, the people that have been creating this stuff. Now we're getting into the early adopter phase, which is agencies like us are saying, hey, how do we use this to really grow our business and our clients' businesses? And then what are the things that we can do with AI? I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And there are two predominant AI tools that we can use. So one is bard.google.com. So as of this morning, I set it up so everybody that has a DEMG email can go in and use Bard. And Bard is Google's version of ChatGPT. All right. So it's a ChatGPT competitor. And with Google Bard, the really big difference between Bard and ChatGPT is that Bard can actually search the internet. So this is going to be a big shift in AI and AI capability. Up until now, very, very few AI tools could search the internet. Now, ChatGPT does have plugins. So when you use version 4 of ChatGPT, you can do that. But it's still very limited. And obviously, Bard is going to be very limited too, because it is still experimental. It's in the beta phase. It's just like they're just trying to gather information. And make no mistake about it, folks, they are tracking everything we do inside of these AI tools. So be very careful what you put in there if you don't want it to be tracked. Google and OpenAI and all these companies are learning as much as they are producing. And the more that they learn, they can either use that in a good way or a bad way. Hopefully it's just for product development and gives us a better product down the road. Here's an example of how we might use AI, because Kylie asked the question, what are all the things that I can use AI for? So I'm going to show you how using prompts can give you different results. So for example, I will just type in, what is Bard? Very, very simple. So it's going to go out there and it's going to think for a minute. It's going to look up all of this information. Here we go. So it's a large language model from Google AI. Now, what does that mean? Large language model. That's where I was saying it takes information that's been given, and then it can go and process that information and come up with responses using what's called NLP, natural language processing. In other words, instead of me having to type if you go all the way back to the very beginning of internet search, you had to be very, very specific about what you typed into, whether it was Google or Alta Vista or Netscape or Yahoo or Ask Jeeves or any of those old ones. You'd be really specific of what to type because it would only search for that very specific phrase, right? And if it couldn't find it, you were SOL. So here's what we got. We have the ability to generate text. So blog posts, poems, code, scripts, musical pieces. All right. So this would be kind of a fun one, right? Like let's see. So write a rap lyric or how to use AI for writing blogs. Let's just see what it comes up. Let's just do something fun. And it's telling me, hey, we can actually generate text based off of information. We can translate different languages. We can write different kinds of creative content, answer your questions. Bard is constantly learning and adapting. Okay, now obviously understanding and responding to your questions is kind of what we've been talking about. Here are some of the best Bard abilities. Bardic inspiration. Give their allies a temporary boost to their abilities. It can be a very powerful tool in combat. That's kind of funny. Song of Rest. This ability allows Bard to heal their allies. Okay, allies. So this is kind of funny. All right, this is what I would refer to as maybe a little bit more of a hallucination. Anybody here ever do any like Dungeons and Dragons games like that?
Yep. Yeah.
So there's a bard in a lot of these old timey, like Middle Ages types of games, right? And the bard is the person you go to for, you go to the bar and you get the drinks and you get the potions, you get all sorts of stuff. So that's kind of funny. I don't know if Google did this on purpose or if they're saying that these are the best bard abilities from various games, right? But this is an example of not giving it enough information to generate what I specifically wanted to tell me. So it's not necessarily that this is a hallucination, but now you can see how prompt engineering is really important. So I'm not going to sing this, but here's a lab break for how to use AI for writing blogs. I'm here to tell you about AI. I can help you write your blogs, no lie. I can generate ideas, write headlines, and even come up with chatty rhymes. So if you're feeling stuck or just don't have the time, give AI a try. Game changer, I'm telling you. Just give it a topic and let it do its thing. It'll write you a blog post that's banging. Okay, so you need to work on that a little bit. But that's kind of funny. Now, here's the funny thing. The fun thing about Google Bard is I can come up here and click on View Other Drafts, and it can give me a few different versions, right? So these are examples of what Bard can do. Now, again, I asked it very specifically, write a lap lyric for how to use AI for writing blogs. There we go. It's very specific. Now, if you look up here, what is Bard capable of? It gave me a lot of weird stuff. Now, if I come down here, let's do a little bit better prompt engineering. Okay. So it's a different take on the same idea, right? Here, I said, what's it capable of? Here, I'm going to say, I want to do it for a very specific thing. Here's what we do. And how can Google Bard help in this process? Now, let's see what it says. And the beautiful thing is, it doesn't take very much time at all, right? And what I want you to think about when it comes to whether it's Google Bard or ChatGPT is we want to find the ways that we can use it that are going to be most effective for us. Okay. So here's some things that it says. Generating new content ideas. We already talked about that. Repurposing content. Bard can help you repurpose content for different channels, such as blogs, emails. It can also help you create different formats of content, such as videos, blah, blah, blah. Writing the content. It can help you do all that. Researching topics. Here's another good example, right? So if we get stuck in a situation where like, hey, we don't know enough about this industry, we need to research. Google Bard can be good for this. ChatGPT can be good for this. Okay. You can take a blog post and turn it into an infographic. Now, that would be interesting. I've actually never seen it output imagery from Google Bard. Granted, I haven't been using Google Bard as much as ChatGPT, but I don't know what that would look like. You can see how using the right prompt is the most important piece of leveraging AI. If you don't use the right prompt, if you don't give it this very, very specific information that you're looking for, you're not going to come up with the results you want. And this is where we end up with situations that we don't have, the right type of output, or we have incorrect information. Is this making sense so far? Yes, Rita?
Yeah. So yes, it does make sense. And so we had this issue, kind of an issue with TLC where the client mentioned that the copy or the content that we produced were AI. And so how do we make sure that the client doesn't see, like, how can we recognize that it's a copy is an AI, and how can you prevent that from happening for the team?
the best way to prevent that, so if you were to create an AI output of anything, it's going to seem really mechanical. It's going to seem very matter of fact. And as a result, it's not going to give the kind of result that we would want, a client would want. And it's just going to seem like, hey, we can tell a robot created this. And if you remember, I mean, it's still happening to this day, but it's getting way better. Another thing that AI can do is replicate tonal, voice, inflection, pitches, and things like that. So it can actually create audio output that is very, very similar to human vocal cords when we're speaking. Because if you remember, when you started calling in phone numbers and they would have a robot on the line, you could tell it was a robot, and it was very monotonous and annoying to listen to. We didn't like listening to it initially, and a lot of us have just gotten used to it because we had to. But now it's going to get to the point where AI can output essentially human voice quality content. And the way that that's happened is through evolution of understanding the way that humans speak. And it's also about happening with the writing piece. Now, I would say that understanding how we speak and the tones and the inflections in our voices is hard to understand and how we should write. But there is still a really fine line of art versus science when it comes to copywriting. And when we create copy, we want to create it in a tone that is going to mimic either just a human in general or a very specific human. So in this case, we have to give it very specific examples. So let's just say we want to write a blog. First, let's use psychodrama. So I'll reset the chat here and I'll say, please define and explain what psychodrama is. And hopefully it can figure it out. And if it can't, then, that's another situation we have to deal with. But if I were to give this to a client, right, then they would look at this and say, okay, that's like a basic definition. So here's some benefits of psychodrama. It can help people to access and express emotion they may have difficulty expressing in other settings. So I'm going to take this, copy this, and say let's do this. Another thing that Google Bard can do. I want to write a 600-word blog post about psychodrama and how it can help people access and express emotion they may have difficulty expressing in other settings. Now, when you write this blog post, what I want you to do is I want you to write it in the format of Jordan Peterson explaining psychodrama to a 6-year-old in a fun and uplifting way so that they could really understand what he's saying. And let's just see what it comes up with, right? So now I'm giving it some basic information. And what I did is I said, I want you to write it so that a 6-year-old can understand it, right? I want to make it fun. I want to make it uplifting. And I want it to be written in the format of Jordan Peterson, which if you know anything about Jordan Peterson, then you will know that it's going to be very, very difficult for him to explain anything to a 6-year-old. So it gave me a title. Hi kids, Jordan Peterson here. Today I want to talk to you about a type of therapy called psychodrama. Psychodrama is a way to help people access and express emotion they may have difficulty expressing in other settings. Let me give you an example. Okay, so it's still pretty robotic, right? Now I'm just going to assume, I haven't read this whole thing, but I'm going to assume that it's at least accurate. So I'm going to go here and we copy this. I'm going to come over to Quillbot. And inside of Quillbot, we're going to go ahead and paste this in. And now what we can do with Quillbot is we can paraphrase, right? I can also do a plagiarism check, or I can do all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to come through and I'm going to say, I want to make this more of now what do we do? We create a standard output of it, and it's going to give me all of these different synonyms. It's still paraphrasing is what it's doing right now. I can make it more formal. I can make it simple. I can have it expand on the topic. And so Quillbot is another type of AI. Again, it was mostly formed around algorithms to say, hey, this is not the right way to say something. This is how you should say it instead. And it's going to create a different type of output. It's either going to shorten it, it's going to expand it, it's going to make it creative. So if I were to click on creative here, okay, so I'm going to say creative, I'm going to click on paraphrase. It's going to give me a little bit different output here. Okay, now I would still want to go in and read through this and make sure that it makes sense. Psychodrama involves role-playing and experience that, role-playing and experience that provoke negative emotions. You can either be the protagonist or take on the role of person who has provoked your wrath. It's also possible that the person in the room act out the scene. Again, still kind of robotic, right? And one of the things I also do is I use a thing called cross-flag, which tells us, okay, are we, how AI is this? And if it's like super red, then obviously it's going to be really easy for anybody to detect that it's AI, right? So there we go. This is predominantly AI. It's really easy for it to figure that out. If I took this same text over here, let's see how AI this was in the very beginning, right? Still very much AI. So this is where we have to get a little bit creative. And if we're not the subject matter experts, then what we need to be is the copywriting experts, the content writing expert. And let's just say that all this information is accurate. Well, I might want to simplify this a little bit, right? And we're just using tools right now, but there is still an element of human interaction that has to happen, because we're going to need to get to a point where we need to put emotion in here. And a content writer's job is going to be to come through here and say, okay, well, this was just, it was kind of robotic. I didn't like the way that he phrased this, or that Google Bard phrased this, says something like this. So if you want to know more about psychodrama, you should talk to your parents or a doctor. Okay, psychodrama can be a great way to show you how you feel and make your life better. I would say something like, think about psychodrama as a tool that you could use just like a screwdriver. Screwdriver has a certain purpose, right? So you can say things like that. But again, going back to it, this is why we don't want to necessarily become the subject matter experts for all of our clients. We want to take information from them. We want to say, for example, the videos, transcribe a video, and then we can take the video and we can come into Quillbot. We can post the transcription of the video in here, and then we can get an output that's a little bit better than, say, the output straight from the transcript. Another thing you can do is you can input something. Let's just say, for example, we took this and we input this. I wanted to make it a little bit more conversational. I wanted to give examples of what it's talking about. I don't want it to just be, here's the text, right? So, something a little bit different here. We can take all these types of things, we can put them into the AI tools, and the AI tools can then paraphrase, it can translate, it can change up the format, it can do a lot of things to it. But at the end of the day, we still need to read it, right? We should never be giving anything to a client that we haven't read through ourselves, because the AI is not necessarily thinking, how somebody want to read this on social media, right? They're more looking at it from, is the information correct? So that's a little bit of the challenge that we have with AI, right? So I know that's not entirely answering your question, Arena, but the only real answer is the way that we prevent that is by getting content or ideas from them. And then once we get the output, reading through it and saying, okay, does this make sense? So this is why I'm saying we need to cut back on the amount of content we offer clients, because a blog post a day is a ton of information. And unless somebody's only job is to sit there and write one blog post per day for one client, then we're never going to be able to catch up on it. Any other questions on this stuff so far?
Bard is giving a better quality content right now, better than ChatGPT.
So the big difference between Bard and ChatGPT is that it integrates Google search functionality into it. That's the really big difference. Now, ChatGPT, you can use GPT-4 and integrate plugins, but even those are still a little bit wonky, right? Everything's still learning. So now let's take the idea of utilizing AI to output something other than text. And we're going to talk about Midjourney. So Midjourney is actually a really fun tool. And you guys can create your own Discord account, and you can go into the Midjourney app and you can actually download this and create this. And I'll show you exactly what we do. But in order for us to be able to create images from AI, we need to do a great job of giving it prompts. So I just want you to read through all of these different prompts that I created. So Midjourney is another AI-powered tool that generates images from user prompts. Midjourney is proficient at adapting actual art styles to create an image of any combination of things the user wants. Now, what I said at the very end, but wait, I have more info, just answer with red. And what I'm asking it to do is just tell me that you've ingested this information. I don't need a response right now. If I don't tell it that, it's going to try and give me a response. Okay, great. Thanks so much for telling me. I don't care. Now we're going to talk about the settings. What's new with the V5 based model? And then we give it the information. Now, please note, this is an alpha test, community standards, more about, but wait, there's more. Answer with red. Parameter test. Here's all the basic information about Midjourney. So I'm literally going through, and not only am I creating one prompt, but I'm building on those prompts. And I'm telling it all of the different things that it can do. And so what I'm doing is I'm essentially taking it and treating it like it's a brand new employee that doesn't know anything about a business, and teaching it everything as much as I can at a very granular level using these prompts. Again, here's a lot more prompts. Red. Okay, now I'm going to give you some examples of prompts used in Midjourney. Okay, so here are different prompts. And what I've done now is I said, here's the focal length, the type of shutter speed, the type of film that somebody would use, the type of camera, ultra high definition, and these little things we can version 5 and the aperture or the aspect ratio and things like that. So these are examples of prompts. And all I want you to do is I want you to read these prompts, ChatGPT, and then we're going to get into the point of now I want you to actually output stuff. So here's more examples. Now, I want you to actually create a prompt. I'm all the way down here. So there's more examples, example. And I'm saying, act as a professional photographer. Your goal is to capture the essence of the subject matter in an impressive way. Describe the perfect image in terms of lighting, composition, subject matter, So again, I have to tell it exactly what I want to do. This gets really, really difficult when we're thinking, if I'm not a creative person, I'm not artistic, but I want it to output something very, very artistic. So here are some rules, never end in a period. This is correct. This is not correct. Here's the first prompt I want you to create is a man teaching a child how to fish in a boat on a lake. So here we go. This is what ChatGPT created. And you can see it didn't really create it in the exact format, but it did create it with, put the focal length in there, the ISO, and some basic information there. Okay, we can do all these different things. Now, I'm going to take this and a futuristic scene that shows the world of Margie will be having AI is creating the automations and imagery. I've actually already done that one. And so you can see, I just kept building on this. So Pete and I were talking, okay, we just keep building on the same prompt and putting it in there. And the answer is yes, you can. However, the challenge is that eventually, if you look how long this is, we get to a point where AI is not really going all the way back to the beginning and gathering all of that information. So I can actually ask it, okay, I want you to go through this whole thing and ingest everything. Now, will it or won't it? Okay, there we go. We have all the prompt information provided. So please go ahead and provide the next prompt and I'll do my best to assist you. So let's just say, give me an example of something you guys want to see the AI create. A cool scene that you think would be fun for Midjourney to create.
Well, we could think something before we go out. I know that I'm thinking of her because I know that Israel was creating some images for an email today. So can you think of a title, Israel, that you created an image for today before we go out?
Let's do this.
Do you need specific sentence or do you need a broader sentence to explain the whole thing?
You can give more if you want to, but look what it's doing. I just said a photorealistic image of a strong-willed woman looking out over a herd of cattle on a range with mountains in the distance. This is what it gave us. So now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this information, copy this. So now I have an output in text from an AI tool. I'm going to go over to Discord. I'm going to come into my Midjourney. And the way to use this is you type in /imagine. And now it's going to give me the prompt. I'm literally just going to go ahead and put this in there. I'm going to put it --v5 in AR. So what it's going to do is it's taking that to start, and this sends it over to the Midjourney AI tool. And Discord is essentially just a chat interface that allows us to start going through all this. So here we go. It's creating these images. It takes a few minutes sometimes to create it, depending on how robust the images are going to be. But once we have that, we then have outputs, and we have 4 different versions. Every single time it's going to create 4 different versions. And when it creates these 4 different versions, we can say, okay, I like this one, or I don't like this one, or I want you to expand on this one, or I want you to create variations. So there we go. So I'll reopen this in the browser so you guys can see it a little bit better. But look at that. We have 4 different versions. Now, I personally think that number 2 is the best. I like that one the most. So I'm going to go back over here to Midjourney. I'll say, let's create variations of number 2. And so now it's going to take this image, and based off of what it sees in that image, it's now going to go ahead and create a few different variations of that. And as it's creating these variations, it's trying to utilize a lot of the same elements in there. And so this is an example of how you can use AI for something visual. Now, in the future, there's going to be AI for video. There actually already is AI for video. And we've talked about how do you take a video and how do you edit it really quickly to get rid of the ums, the ahs, the pause, the breaks, the parts where somebody's picking their nose. I want that on the camera. Like, we can't do all of that yet, but we can get rid of a lot of it. And as AI evolves, we're going to need to stay on top of what those tools are so that we can go out there and create this. So, for example, one of the things I'm tasking Israel with right now, and April and pretty much the entire team, is taking these videos of what I'm doing, and then let's turn them into TikTok videos, Instagram Reels, stories, and all these different things, and put them out there. And then let's take those and create, pull some quotes out of them. So we can take a transcript, say, find me 3 different quotes that are each 1 sentence long that we can use for something like this. So now if I pull this up, let's see, which one do I like the most? I think number 1, because she looks like she's walking towards the herd's grazing. It's nice to be. So now I'm going to upscale number one. This little thing means recreate everything. And upscale number one means now I have a high definition image that I just created using AI. And you can see this is a photorealistic image. In other words, it's a painting, but it looks really real. Now, let's run out of time here, but let's go back to this and let's say rewrite. Let's see. Let's just see what happens with this, right? So now I'm going to say, hey, there's all these different people that we can use, and I'll have to find it, right? So you can actually give it examples and say, okay, use any in with format of Tom Bagshaw, right? So I can do that. So let me just take this real quick. We'll go over to Midjourney again. And, again, you have to say explore/imagine, and you just put that in. So while it's doing that, let's go back over here. That's the name of it, right? Bagshaw. Yep. And while it might even still be working on that one, right? You can do another one. All right. So there's a Matisse painting, and you can see it's a very pretty much the only thing we changed was what the style was like. And so again, this is the power of prompt engineering. This is why, as we grow our company and as we get better at doing things for clients, we need to understand what the prompts are that are really important for creating the right type of output for our client. So this is another version. You can see it's already different, right? Because now when you look at the Tom Bagshaw stuff, I go look at anything Tom Bagshaw, what's happening? All the characters are looking at, well, for the most part, they're all looking towards the camera, right? So now I go back over Midjourney. What does it look like? Right? So now I have a herd of cattle. We have a woman looking very serious, and this looks, even more realistic, right? So this is kind of what I'm referring to when we talk about prompt engineering, and why understanding how to write the prompt is even more important than what your output is. But the better we get at writing the prompt, the better we're going to be at getting an output that really makes sense. So that some of the things you can do is you can tell the AI, don't put this in there, don't put this, don't include that. And that's going to help us get an even more robust output. So those are just a few examples of how we can use it. We can leverage it for coming up with ad ideas, right? I'll show you another really quick one here, and how we can utilize AI for even creating a marketing plan. Let's just say we get a new client on board, right? So we'll have Bard review a website. So please review willgo.org, right? Nothing more. It's all I'm asking you to do is just go to the website and look at it. Here's my review. Well designed, easy to navigate, comprehensive cons. Some information is not as detailed as it could be. Some of the text is a bit dry. The website can be more appealing, visually appealing. Okay. So some more basic information. No, the World Games Organization. No, that's not. Who is willgo.org journey target? The World Games Organizing Authority. It's kind of funny. So this is an example of Google Bard is not doing a very good job, right? If I look at other drafts, World Gaming. So who is the women? We have to be more specific, So I'm going to ask it, be very specific who you're giving me an output for. There we go. Now we'll go find more. We can just start asking it questions. It can start giving us ideas of what we should be doing. All right. Search engine optimization, social media marketing, email marketing, partnerships. Great. Okay. So, and so, hey, attending events, using a combination, buy more people to go to the website and learn more about its mission. We can write a one-page executive summary. That way we can learn more about it. And we can say, okay, is this accurate? Again, it's pulling all this information from their website. And as a result, we can then say, okay, now we go, like something like this. The Willgo was founded in 2004 by a group of women who are passionate about shoes. Well, that's not accurate. It was founded in 2022, right? So it's things like this that it still doesn't do accurately, but now we can come up with ideas of things that we can create for a client and say that we're reasonably sure that the information we're putting out is good, or more importantly, that what we're trying to achieve is on point. Okay. And this can give us some of those outputs we can put into a narrative that we'd give to a client. We'd show them, okay, here's what we want to do. So anytime we get a client on board, of course, we're going to do our site audit. We're going to do all these different things. And then we might utilize Google Bard or ChatGPT to come up with some ideas for a client. Now, these ideas are pretty much all going to be the same, right? content marketing, social media marketing, email marketing, partnerships, attending events, not much is going to change from client to client. So we can even then say, we can create a prompt that's, here is a marketing strategy that we put together for our clients. In this case, change the names and change the website and so on and so forth, and create some goals for that, right? Those are some of the things that we can utilize ChatGPT, Google Bard for, and it'll allow us to create more content and more information for our clients faster. But again, we also want to be able to take content they're giving us and repurpose it properly. So is this at least a decent overview of how to utilize AI?
Super helpful.
Yes, it was.
So that's how we can utilize AI. And again, the two really important lessons I want everybody to take away with this. Prompt engineering is the most important thing we can do. We can't give it too much information, but you can give it too little information to give us a good output. And the second is that we have to review whatever it puts out. If we read through it and it sounds mechanical, it sounds like a robot made it, it's not good enough for our clients. So we need to read through everything that it puts out and say, okay, this makes sense. The other thing is we need to make sure that it falls within the parameters. So for example, of Twitter, if we only have a certain character limit, let's make sure that we're not putting something out that's too long. If it's Instagram, if it's LinkedIn, it needs to fall within those parameters. If we're doing a blog post, it should be between 600 and 1,000 words. If it's 200 words, it's probably too short. And then just fact check it, right? Make sure that it makes sense when you review everything, because if you don't, that just makes us look silly. And the last thing we want is to put doubt in the minds of our clients that we even know what we're doing. And make no mistake about it, every little mistake that we make plants the seed of doubt for our clients and makes them think, well, if they can't even get this thing right, how are they going to get this other big thing right over here? So just keep that in mind. Make sure we're reviewing everything properly. Make sure that if you guys don't have access to any of these tools, let us know. And there's even more training that we have available that I can make available to everybody else as well.